Well, good afternoon, friends. Good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Conversations with Dune Friends. Today we have a fantastic friend joining us from, I think, the Calgary area. So Calgary, Alberta, and I'm, of course, from Sherwood Park, Alberta here. My name is Dune Nguyen, and glad that you're able to join us here for another hour or so of conversation with our guest today. We have Dave Byrnes joining us today. Let me just do a quick introduction of Dave's background for you before we have him on to talk with us for an hour or so. And feel free, folks, to comment and to interact with us throughout the conversation here and ask Dave some questions. Put Dave on a hot seat if you like. Not too hot, though, but certainly interact with us. More fun that way. So Dave Byrnes, the introverted networker. Now, so Dave helps introverts and in the organization really win at work. He empowers introverts to be happier and more successful and helps leaders increase team productivity. Now, really, he's on a mission to prove and to really dispel the fact that, introverts are actually not, really, they just look at life in a different way. They really reflect a bit more often, a bit more reflective. But really, the success does not preclude introvert. You don't have to be an extrovert to be successful. And so we're going to talk about introversion. We're going to talk about all things related to really group dynamics. So with that brief introduction, friends, help me in welcoming our wonderful guest today, Mr. Dave Byrnes. How are you doing today, my friend, Mr. Introverted Networker?
I'm well, thanks, Dune. Thanks for having me.
Tell us, how did you come to that conclusion, that realization that that's what it is?
Around being an introvert, or
yeah, that whole introvert thing. When did you realize that you're one, and when did you accept the fact that that's just cool and I'm going to roll with it?
I found it out far too late. Really, I could have done with learning it probably about 20 years earlier in my life. So it was probably only about 6 years ago that I learned about it when Susan Cain kind of got very popular with her TED talk about introverts, and then read the book, and a whole lot of things fell into place about why I had always felt a little bit different and felt that sometimes I was in the wrong roles, or I was doing things the wrong way, or I really struggled in certain aspects of work where it's really is sort of more of an extrovert based workplace in the corporate world. So yeah, a lot of things fell into place. So I was very happy to accept it. Mm-hmm. Although some friends might deny the fact that I'm an introvert. I'm a bit too out there, but yeah.
You're an introvert on a mission. When you have some, a goal to accomplish, you put yourself on the line, even though you maybe in some cases would prefer to kind of be a little bit more in the background.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing that says introverts can't be front and center, can't speak, can't. I mean, if you think about it, some of the greatest actors of all time have been introverts. It might be a lot different being on camera or being on the stage, but yeah, there's nothing really stopping introverts from taking the. Mm-hmm. So really, it's when you got something bigger than yourself, then you can step up, and that's where I got to with donning the introverted networker moniker and working away from that point of view.
Very cool, very cool. So tell us a bit more. When did you discover the whole power of not only networking, but also professional speaking? Now, you're a member of CAPS, you're a fellow member of mine in the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers. Tell us about the discovery of the importance of networking and the importance of presentations and speaking.
Absolutely. Networking was, the importance was brought to me because I would say for a good 15 to 20 years, I literally sucked at networking. I didn't think I could do it. From the get-go of getting out of university, or even starting to try to network in university as I was looking for work. So I studied communications, wanted to become a journalist, and pretty immediately I felt that there was that gap. There was those people that seemed to walk into positions and know people, and I was not one of those people. And so from that point, I'm old enough that job boards were just really starting to become popular back then. But I think, I'm not sure if I ever mailed a job application, but I probably faxed job applications. I'm old enough to have done that, but I think I would have mailed some as well. But the job boards were sort of first coming out back then, so I thought that was great. You just send things away, and if you're good enough, you should win. And I really didn't find that was the case. I really didn't get opportunities. So straight out of university, I was working in a customer service role pretty much out of university at a car dealership, and it was meant to be more public relations, but in the end it was just me on the phone, just getting hammered by call after call, and again, not knowing that I was an introvert, just being exhausted all the time, not really like loving life. And my first opportunity to get inside a newsroom was actually in Canada, because my brother had moved over to Canada, and his wife worked at a paper here, and I got to have a chance at just being an editorial assistant at a newspaper. And I got my foot in the door. I sold a few articles, and that's what got me started. But those little incidental networking incidents that helped me along were few and far between. I always really struggled. I do well in my job, but I always struggled to move up or move to another area. So it was largely just a progression until in Canada, in working in oil and gas, and we had a big restructuring, and I was early 30s, and it really felt like I'd just been put into early retirement. I was just shoved off into a corner and said, we're gonna restructure, we're gonna get you a manager again, just hang on. So
wow.
Yeah, one of those ones where for the first few weeks it was fun to have very little work to do and kind of hide and pretend I was busy, but after a while it became tedious, because I was in that part of my career, in a new country. I was trying to move up the chain and get a role that was more suited to, again, get back into communications and those kinds of things. And I was struggling to find a way to move to another company, or even internally move around. So that was the point where I said enough is enough, and I went off on a journey of trying to be an extrovert, like doing every bit of advice out there about networking, and many disasters and a lot of struggle before I found my way of doing things and found my groove in my networking and in my career.
Yeah, wow. So again, as is very common, awesome discoveries always tend to be right around the point of the most pain, right? A painful experience, the way you describe it, has a great way of clarifying what our next steps are and what the evolution of ourselves is. And thank you for sharing that. And, in Alberta here, I'm sure there's many people who've experienced a similar story that you have shared. That is being a critical part of an organization, of a company for a long time, and then all of a sudden somehow feeling like you've sort of been just put aside and just, like you said, early retirement, and just really just sort of, they didn't want to kind of it's like they decided you're not going to be part of their future, so they just park you aside there for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I've been through 2 crashes. I've been here. I started working in oil and gas 2008, so it was probably a few months before the first crash, but I was kept on through that. But having talked to people through 2 crashes, one of the ironies in life is when you when you need to network or when you need to find a job, it's always, for starters, it's always easier to find a job when you have a job. It's probably the cruelest rule of the universe out there. So many people find that that they really struggle to find work if they're unemployed. But when you're employed, often things fall in your lap. But networking has a momentum, and too many people stop networking or never knew how to do it in the first place. So when something unfortunate does happen, like being retrenched, they have to start from scratch. That's why I often talk to people that it takes a few months to get that momentum in your networking. So you need to find ways to never stop it. It doesn't mean you need to be out hounding people for opportunities, even when you're happy. But it's really something that people have struggled with in Calgary, is being employed long term, and then the plan goes out the window and they have to start from scratch. So it can be tough from that point of view.
Thank you for sharing that sentiment of, like you said, the worst time to be looking for a job is when you don't have a job. And it almost seems like the same cruelty, as you used the word there, is cruel. It's the same cruelty that applies to money. When you need money, that's probably the most difficult time to borrow money. When you don't need money, people seem to want to lend you all kinds of money, right? So love it or hate it, we need to kind of be in front of the need. We have to be sowing seeds long before we expect to harvest, I guess.
Yeah, and it can be tough, because if you're not looking for a job, many people will be, why am I networking? As a business owner or someone in sales, it's different. You've got to create business. You've got a reason, but it can be as simple as keeping an eye out to try to help others, because that's what I think the golden rule of networking is. It's offer value before asking for it. That's how I operated. I used to find networking very difficult, because I had an incorrect assumption that networking was asking for things. It was transactional in nature, and that, I think that was a huge piece to why I always struggled with it through my first couple of careers. But when I started to look at it, just going to an event and see if I can help one person, give them some advice, connect them to someone, whatever I can do to add some value, all the weight went off the shoulders. I stopped getting that picture of a used car salesman, always feeling like I had something, the back of my mind, that I wanted something from someone. So that golden rule of offer value before you ask for it, do unto others, whichever version you want to take of the golden rule. If you apply that to networking, I think things get a lot easier, and you can keep up that momentum as well.
That is a really powerful truth about human relations and about networking that you mentioned, that I want to again underscore for our viewers who are watching. The idea is that networking really is a game of human relations, is really a game of sowing seeds, right? You sow seeds, and then, when you need to grab some food, there's all kinds of seeds that have sort of grown over the years. Not every seed you sow is going to be grown into a fruit-bearing tree, but if you don't sow any seeds, don't be surprised if there's no fruit to harvest or any, things to eat, right?
So, absolutely.
Very cool. So networking, the other thing is, you mentioned the whole idea of make sure that you provide value. I mean, that is so obvious. And yet most of us who go to networking in our early days forget that. We just get, rushed to this idea. Another concept I wanted to suggest as well is that in life is funny that way. The most efficient or effective path between 2 points is not often a straight line. Sometimes we have to go around. Why? Because humans are not machines. Humans are not 100% logical. Humans are, again, there's emotions, there is all kinds of stuff that is at play. And so we have to be mindful of that when it comes to trying to get to the end goal by a straight line. That oftentimes is in fact counterproductive, because there'll be all kinds of blockers in the way, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Cool. So as you tell me the time, I don't know how long ago, but when did you decided to kind of put a bag over your head to make the point that you are trying to make with it? Let me pull up that photo again here while you talk about that.
Yeah, the bag on the head was accidental. That it turned into a symbol for introversion. Originally, when I left sort of the corporate world over here, I started helping people with their LinkedIn profiles, helping people with their job search, and I tried to find a way to discuss and illustrate the fact that when people didn't have profile pictures, and a lot of it was more so women than men that tended to not want to have a profile picture up, and I really wanted to get it across. So what I came up with is not having a picture on LinkedIn is like putting a paper bag on your head, and I always keep a prop handy when I'm on video anyway. But so I used to do it for that, and it was actually at a CAPS meeting. I was doing a talk about LinkedIn, and I threw the bag on the head and made my point, and it got the biggest laugh of anything I had. Like any of my on purpose jokes didn't do as much damage as the bag on the head gag. And it was just talking to people afterwards. They were like, "Oh, is that like your introvert, uniform or something, Dave?" And I went, "Yeah, I guess so." Like in those days, I wasn't talking about introversion. I was just known as the LinkedIn guy. That was what I did, and that's how people recognized me. And then the process from there was I was starting to look at my business, and I was doing some masterminding with a couple of other business owners, and I started to think, like, why am I obsessed with LinkedIn? Why am I pushing it? Why am I trying to help people? Why do I think it's this big answer? And when I really looked at why I became really good at LinkedIn, it came back to you suck at networking. At least I suck at networking in the traditional sense, like the extroverted. I'm not going to cold call. I don't want to go to an event every night. I can go to events and I can be totally open, have a good time with people. But I started to realize I had the cart ahead of the horse. I was doing LinkedIn because I was an introvert, and that got me to the point where I started to think about, well, should I tighten up my marketing to start to approach introverts and help them with their networking, go a little bit larger than just LinkedIn or social media, and look at it that way. So that was the crux. It was basically people laughing at me when I was trying to be serious and make a good point that prompted the journey. And then I started to find some real gaps in the discussion out there about introverts in the workplace, whether it's careers. I've taken a look at leadership, because a lot of where some of the previous talk speakers or people that have talked on the subject before, they often talk about introverts who are leaders. But I always felt it would be just as important to help extroverted leaders understand their introverts, because that's where some of the big gaps can be. And if we live in this environment where the workplace is geared towards extroverts and rewards extroverted behavior, which makes sense. The more outgoing people, the people that stick their hand up, they're the people that are going to get recognized. But if we want to change that, we've got to get understanding between the introverts and the extroverts, and let our leaders know about some of the strengths of introverts, some of the advantages that aren't being taken care of. So that's also where the mission or the crusade comes in. It's kind of, can I let introverts know what they're actually good at, that they might be actually wallowing in their weaknesses at work, and then can I help the leaders and the other team members understand how to get the best out of their introverts and how to communicate, because I used to struggle to communicate with extroverts at work, and it wasn't until I started to understand how we're wired differently that I was able to communicate better. But I also I had more respect for people when I understood them. When I didn't understand people, extroverts used to bug me at work.
You know, again, here's another common theme. Understanding is really powerful for human nature. You know, if you can just again understand the people that you work with better, you're going to have better collaboration. You're going to have better teams. You're going to have better organizations. So again, I'm curious though, do you know or roughly guesstimate if I was to ask, what's the percentage extroverts versus introverts in the world? Is there such a stats that is being floated around, or any numbers that you might guess?
You know, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics. But,
yeah, that's right.
Generally, the rough guess is about a third of people. Yeah, I've seen experts claim as much as 50%. But what you've got to take into account is there isn't pure introvert, pure extrovert, and nothing in between.
Right.
So it would depend a little bit on how you collected that data and how you tested people, because a lot of people are in the middle. They're ambiverts, and introverts can move on the scale to a point. Like I'm not as introverted as I would have described myself as 5 years ago, 10 years ago. But a lot of that is more based on personal development work.
Right.
I'm comfortable being in front of a room. I usually joke that I'd rather be in front of 100 people talking to them than down there networking with them and hanging out with strangers. That's just my weird way of dealing with it. But so it's probably about a third. But everyone needs to remember as well, you might have some tendencies that are more introverted and some tendencies that are more extroverted. You can't change. Like, you can't become an extrovert. You can pretend to be an extrovert for years if you want. I've been there, done that. So roughly a third, but you might be surprised that some of the people that you've worked with or colleagues that you might think are extroverts that actually aren't as well.
Now, tell us about how and when and why you discovered and joined CAPS, the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers. Give us that backstory of how that transformed over the years.
Yeah, I think like quite a few people, I'd got into Toastmasters, which is, for people that don't know, is basically a worldwide speakers sort of education, but it's a group, a community where people get together and practice speaking. And it was part of that journey when I'd said enough is enough with my career and not being able to network. So I went to Toastmasters and forced myself to get up in front of people every single time I went to a meeting. In that first 3 years, I made myself do a speech once a month. We meet once a week. So I ended up going 36 months straight doing one speech a month, often not very well prepared for them either. I must say, but the deadline was there, so it didn't matter if I was ready or not. I just went past where most people get to. They just want to get to being able to talk in front of their peers at work, that kind of thing. But I really enjoyed the art of it. And as I'd transitioned again from being in corporate land to working for myself, I started to see an opportunity to reach more people and reach people in a different way. So I think it was a Toastmaster that told me about CAPS. Somehow they got to me, and I went along to a meeting, and I was pretty impressed by the caliber. I was definitely intimidated by the caliber. I would say that my networking skills were not particularly good that day. I was a bit intimidated, but everybody was very welcoming as well. It took me a few years to kind of get to the point where I joined up, and I did the fast track, which is basically a business of speaking course that Calgary's done for quite a few years, and that was the launching pad to become a member and get really serious about learning all the intangibles, because unfortunately, like with a lot of things, learning your craft is great, but it doesn't actually get you paid until you learn all the other aspects of running a business. So CAPS has been great for that aspect, as well as developing my skills.
Wonderful. Tell us about this photo where you appear to be in interview / conversation with, is this in Calgary or some other places? Or
Yeah, that's CTV in Calgary at about 5:30 in the morning, or some ungodly hour that we had to get up. I got up at 4:30 in the morning for that one. Yeah, that was back during the 2014 crash. I actually wrote a book on job search with the lady there, Joy, and we basically wrote it really Calgary and really Alberta focused. So it was really aimed at the tens of thousands of oil workers that had lost their jobs. So the book was called "Surviving the Downturn," and so that was one of the interviews we did prior to, as we launched that. So it was a fun experience. It's another whole thing compared to speaking, staring at a camera and again at 5 in the morning when your brain's not working very well. But it was a fun experience, and writing a book was a tough but rewarding experience.
Now, is this, did I spell it correctly, the title of your book, one of your books?
Yeah, that's the one.
So how many books have you written so far, Dave?
That is the one and only at this point. I've considered
Is it available on Amazon, or how do you distribute it?
Well, that book is out of print. We ran it as a bit of an experiment. So it was in an ebook format, and then we did a short print run. But we really wrote that very specifically for Alberta. So
in other words, it was targeted at a particular situation that sort of kind of passed along, and you just sort of use it for that purpose.
Yeah, well, I mean, the rest of the country was in a different position than Alberta when we had the oil crash previously. So we looked at rewriting it, and I've never got to the point to write it for a larger audience. At this point, my focus has changed a little bit from general job search to the introvert focus, and that communication and teamwork focus. I was asked to write a book on networking for introverts a little bit earlier in the year, and the offer wasn't quite right for me, but it's on the horizon. But it's one way to do things. I've been a little bit more focused on video in recent times, working to build up a bit of a library of YouTube videos for people. People are still reading, but I think the introvert book in general terms is being covered. People are finding new angles on it. So I won't say never, but I haven't found it the exact right opportunity to write something again.
So tell us more about LinkedIn. Now, what I'm going to do is, do you mind if I bring in your LinkedIn profile briefly as well, or is that okay? Or
absolutely. If I wasn't okay with it, I would be pretty poor professional.
Let me enlarge it a little bit so it takes as much of the screen as appropriate here. And let me, so tell us about when did you discover that LinkedIn was a really powerful tool that it is, and that you want to spend a whole lot of time on becoming an expert on it, and then also helping others improve their LinkedIn presence and work and whatnot. Tell us a bit about the backstory there.
Yeah, it was when I was in oil and gas, and I had been looking to move into a different position, and LinkedIn just seemed like a good way to do it for someone that was struggling with the regular networking advice out there. And I was like, just about everybody that ever comes up to me, I get an amazing amount of people apologize to me for their LinkedIn profile. It's the first thing out of their mouths when I'm doing a talk that's specifically on LinkedIn, or you're just doing a networking talk and someone comes up to me. I've kind of got two people: the people that probably the extroverts that come up to me straight away and apologize for their LinkedIn profile, and then the introverts that want to talk to me to understand how to network in a better way. But I was like everybody else. I joined years before and did absolutely nothing with it. And then when I had a problem and I wanted to network, that's when I got interested in it. But yeah, I just found it was just made a lot of sense to be able to search for people, find people. I always found that networking events, in-person networking events, were very random. You know, you can obviously go to an industry event and be in the right room, but I was struggling to find those places and those events. So for starters, LinkedIn just seemed like a great place where you could search for like-minded people, or you could search for people who could help you, people that were more experienced, not just people that can hire you, but just building out a network of people who they might hear about an opportunity, they might know someone. Again, you might just be able to help them. So it made a lot of sense. And you know, a lot of my background has been more in the written form. So I was like, why would I talk if I can just write things and be a little bit better thought out. So that was where it came from. And that was probably the early 2010s, like 2011, 2012, when I really got into it. Probably a year, 18 months later, friends and colleagues started contacting me and say, hey, can you help me with my profile? Yours looks really good, or I've seen you posting on LinkedIn all the time. And enough people asked me that I said there might be something to this. This might be that intersection of something that I'm good at, but also something that I'm passionate at. So started to help people write, and that was sort of the start of the business journey for me.
Hey, you and I have apparently, according to LinkedIn, 141 mutual connections.
Doesn't surprise me.
Very cool.
So 140 speakers probably.
That's right. And one listener. I'm kidding. So LinkedIn, as you probably are well aware, LinkedIn is going through a little bit of a transformation right now where, you know, it's getting deep into live video, not quite as deep as Facebook is yet. Apparently you have to be authorized or you have to apply to be able to be approved for live video and all that kind of stuff. But bottom line is, it's a professional network that is, when it comes to professional network, that is the one. There's no other networks other than LinkedIn is the one, right? So it is sort of the king of the hill there in its game that it plays. And they also are evolving quite a bit too. So I'm looking forward to how LinkedIn will become, what it will become and what it will look and feel like in a year or so, or even a few months.
Just look at Facebook, and then LinkedIn will copy it in about a year and a half. Seems to be their plan in the last couple of years. Their formatting has followed LinkedIn, but Facebook. But LinkedIn's funny. Like with the live streaming and things like that, they always wait to make sure that the other platforms have proven that it's going to work before they dive into things. The live video, I think it can be good. I've seen some people do it well, and LinkedIn are now trying stories. So if you're on your mobile device, you'll see stories. So I'm a little curious to see how that's going to go. If it's just people doing selfies and kind of talking about their day, then I got no interest in it. But I think there's some potential for some interesting insights. I like the theory of I've experimented with Instagram. I'm not sold. It's not my primary area, but I like the fact that someone described stories for businesses as basically a behind the scenes look. And I've seen some companies do that really, really well, where they show kind of their behind the scenes or how things work in their business. And I think if people adopted that on LinkedIn for the stories, or even some of the live options they've got, I think that could be quite good. I still think it needs to stay, whether if you're in a career and you want to use LinkedIn, stay in your strength zone. I don't care about your dog on LinkedIn. Like if I want to learn about you personally, I go to Facebook, I go to any of the other platforms. But I think there's a happy medium, because LinkedIn has also gone through a gradual shift to being a little bit more personal. I don't know if you remember, probably 2 years ago, maybe 3, people started telling stories, like written stories, and they were a lot more emotional. There was this sort of vulnerability, and it became a trend that it became a bit of a joke in the end. The media wrote a story about it, and they called it broetry, because there was all these guys in their 20s, and it was the initial people were guys. I followed a couple of them and was in a couple of groups where they explained what they were doing, but there's all these failure stories and overcoming adversity stories, but they were, it was these younger guys, so this whole broetry term got put on there, but you still see it today. I think it's become more refined, and I've done plenty of posts like it, but it was good in a way, because it really showed that you can show your struggles, you can show the personal side of business without straying too far away from what the platform's about and what people go to the platform to do.
Definitely, you have to be mindful of the delicate balance, and you don't want to go too far with it one way or the other. And historically, LinkedIn came from the opposite side of Facebook. LinkedIn, traditionally, when it first got into it, one could say it was kind of like the resume bank, back 12, 14 years ago, or whatever that was. But of course, it's been a lot of years since then, and they continue to evolve. And yeah, it's very cool. Now, in terms of LinkedIn, I guess that the one question, last question I would ask about it is, what's your recommendation for connecting or not connecting with people? Do you have some experiences to share on that when it comes to look here, and I see you have LinkedIn says 500 plus connections. It doesn't, like Facebook says 4,998. It doesn't say that. It just say 500 plus. I don't know if there's a message they're trying to send that to us, but yeah, so any thoughts on connections? And
well, the 500 plus, I think maybe LinkedIn was just trying to give us a break, that so you didn't compare yourself to the next person that had 2,000 or what have you. The main thing with that number is that 500 is kind of a magical threshold that you do want to hit. If you only have 100 people on LinkedIn, your reach is really reduced, and that's kind of just in the practical, who perspective, like outside of social media. But the algorithm also reacts to how seriously you take LinkedIn. So if you have 50 people, your profile is virtually invisible. Yes, you could even search for your own name and not find it in some cases. So that's the main argument for having a certain number of basic connections and filling out your profile at least to a basic level. Getting to that 500 mark, I've worked with people, helping them write posts, and really their reach has gone up, double, triple, quadruple as they double their connections. And there's a happy medium. So I probably have, 2,500. Actually, I think I have about 2,000 connections, but I have about 1,000 followers. So I sit around 3,000. So I've got an advantage with sharing content, but I'm pretty harsh and militant about who I connect with. It's, again, there's got to be a happy medium. There's no point in just treating it like Facebook and only having your co-workers and your family and friends on LinkedIn. You need to find other people in your industry. If you're in business, you need to be getting in front of people that could potentially be customers, could be partners, could even be competitors, depending on how you look at competition versus working together, and that kind of attitude. But yeah, I mean, most people go into it with no plan. You got that email from someone 10 years ago that said, like, look at my profile, and you got into the process, which is what I did. I got halfway through setting up my profile, and I was like, why am I spending time on this? Like, I just clicked on an email from someone. It was brilliant by LinkedIn. That's how they built that first base of 50 to 100 million, was just that whole email campaign. Just you had to join to see what someone had sent you. So yeah, I had to stop because I was like, why am I doing this? And so many people, again, those LinkedIn apologizers that come up to me and go, oh, my profile's embarrassing. And I'm like, well, why do you have a profile? I'm like, I don't know, I shouldn't I? I'm like, should you? It totally depends. So you've got to understand why you have a profile, what you're looking to do. And once you can answer that, then you can start looking for the right people. You can start building out a network that makes some sense. Yeah, I'm a bit different because people will hire me to write their profile or help them write content on LinkedIn. I can't really reject people because they could be a paying customer, so it's a bit tough. But if someone makes no sense, if you're a web marketing company from India, I've already been spammed like 100 times by similar people, so I won't. Like, we're not in the same country, we're not in the same market, and but I had a young guy actually from India like try to connect with me a couple of days ago, and he's basically, I'm a student, I'm trying to build a network, like, if you know any job opportunities. And he basically said, like, job opportunities at your company. And normally I would just delete that guy because I said, you clearly haven't looked at my profile, because I'm not in IT, which is his field. I don't have employees. I'm a one-man band. So, but I reached out to him and just said, how many people have you sent this to? And he said 90, but he was about to send it to 1,500 people. And so I asked, like, who are you trying to reach? Like, because I don't feel like I'm the right person to reach. And we just had a back and forth, and he reached out to me just because I have a large network and I write content, and he thought I might have some influence, or I might know people, but he didn't put that in his original connection request message. So I just said to him, I think you'll get so much further if you send less messages, but you send them to the right people, and you explain why you're connecting with that person. And he said, I'm going to look at that. Like, that makes a lot of sense. So that was one that I could have just brushed that guy off, because I'm judgmental as a LinkedIn expert. I'm very judgmental of things, and I have to breathe and then try to look at it, because my basic rules around
there's a J in your four-letter J. So
there could be. It might just be around LinkedIn though. I don't know. But you should always tell people, like, always send people a message. It would be my biggest thing.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I mean, that's good advice for not only LinkedIn, but communications in general, right? Communicate less frequently, but with more impact, with more intention, and with more focus, and with more power by taking the time to really understand, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, cool. So unless you have other comments about LinkedIn, we're going to move from there. Tell us more about, so when you're working, let's go back to pre-COVID, when you were in the room. I know that in the early days of your career, you really didn't like that scene. Tell us where you got into just prior to COVID. Describe your sort of in-person networking. Did you do much of that before COVID, or did you really consciously focus on a lot of online even before COVID?
I definitely focused on online, but I don't really think, unless your business is purely online, that you can just do that. So I went to normal events. I went to in-person events, and when I first got started with doing the LinkedIn consulting, as in that first couple of years of working for myself, I was at an event least every second week, but if not once a week, getting out there. But again, a lot of the lessons that I found that I built online, they applied just the same to in person. So I got really focused on going to the same kinds of events that worked for me rather than just shotgun everywhere networking. So, originally I was a member of the Chamber of Commerce down in Calgary, and that was a great learning lesson because really how to build that trust with people before they started to refer you. And also, that was the first time that someone introduced me and explained what I did for me. And that was like the branding aha moment. Like I tried so many different little catchphrases and introductions. And when someone just said, "Hey, this is Dave," and I think at the time my explainer was, he helps businesses get past the gatekeepers and talk to the decision makers. And he didn't even mention LinkedIn. And I was like, oh, I think I might stick with that one, because if someone else can remember what you do, that's really important. And at that time I was trying to help people, businesses or salespeople connect to that person that could actually make a decision. Or even with job seekers, I was trying to get job seekers to talk to the hiring manager, build a relationship with the hiring manager before they needed a job, as opposed to just sending stuff to HR, sending stuff to recruiters who really aren't the decision makers. They're, in many respects, they're the gatekeepers. Their job is to filter everybody out, make it easier for a hiring manager. So that was a great lesson, in getting really clear because if no one else can explain or understand what you do, no one's going to hire you. And if people don't realize that the conversation they're having with someone is about you, when they say they've got a problem, and if no one knows, like Dave helps people with LinkedIn, or someone, a leader was explaining, I've got these quiet people on my team and I don't get them. Like I can't communicate well. I don't think I'm getting the best of them. If people didn't know what I did, my name wouldn't come up. They'd be like, oh, you should talk to Susan Cain, like go read her book. But so
in other words, smart marketers and smart connectors understand the importance of the why and the sort of the benefits, rather than how, or the tactics, or the technology, or the approach. They focus more on, again, why would you want to contact Dave? Why would you want to engage him? Why would you want to hire him? Well, again, to help you get past the gatekeeper. That would be more of a why. As far as how you do that, there's various flavors and variations along the way.
Yeah, I mean, I'd go a step further. I heard a definition of marketing as who you help and where they are. And if you think about that, if you don't understand who you help, or if you say the dreaded phrase of "I help everybody," you're in a lot of trouble. So really, and it's the hardest work is figuring out that that ideal client, or that target audience, whatever phrase you want to use for it, the customer avatar, where you sort of fill in the blanks of who, the age, the gender, the job type, all those kinds of things. But when you stay really general, no one's looking for someone that can do everything. So so if you work out who, and then secondly, where are they? Okay, are my people on LinkedIn? Are they on Facebook? Like I get a lot of people selling more, business to customer, like products and things like that, and they try to convince me that LinkedIn's where they should be. And I go, if you think so, but I don't. Like those, and even if those people, like, remember one example, someone like selling sort of fitness, might have been shakes or sort of fitness products. I want to hit the white collar market. And I'm like, that's great, but no one logs onto LinkedIn going, I'm looking for fitness shakes. I'm looking for protein powders. So over on Facebook, where you're looking at pictures of people exercising, and it's your mindset. When you get onto Facebook, for example, you're in leisure mode, or you're in family mode, friends mode, catching up with people. So that makes sense. Doesn't mean you shouldn't target people with white collars, but you can do that. So that who and where is really important, and people everywhere don't do that. Whether it's a job seeker, the amount of people that come to me and say, I need a LinkedIn profile, I'm like, great, what's the job you want to go for? I don't know. Well, we need to figure that out. Or it's like, who is that hiring manager you want to work for? The amount of clients potential clients that I lose because they go and look at that, and most people either have an existential crisis and need to go sort that out for 6 months, or it's too hard and they just go back to work. So that hard work, it's hard looking at yourself. I hate writing my own LinkedIn profile, but I love writing other people's. It's really hard to look at yourself in that third person view, or stepping back. What am I good at? Like, who would want to hire me? Where do I want to be? Those kinds of things. But whether it's business or in a career, you've got to sort those things out, and that would make LinkedIn or normal networking so much easier.
Now, this photo has been quite intriguing to me. Tell us about who you were with and where was this?
Well, yes, I guess this was the only photo when you asked, do I have any get to know you pictures? So this is myself and a bunch of Calgary rugby players, because I would not be in Canada without rugby. That was the weird path that got me here. But about 30 of us went to the World Cup in England and Wales in 2015. And as good Canadians, we all went dressed as Mounties. So we must, just personally, I must be in 50 photos with families. People were just coming up and saying, can we have a photo with our kids? Like the photo right there, I was in my Australia jersey because Australia were playing that night, but I was in my Mountie uniform. But yeah, people were just coming up for photos with us and chatting to us. It was especially as an introvert, greatest icebreaker is have a good costume. People come up to you. It was a great tour. And there was just a huge squad of Canadians. So it was great bumping into other Canadians from around the country over there and chatting rugby, and anybody could chat.
Now, very cool. Now, I want to hear more. Obviously, you were born and raised in Australia, and then at some point came to Canada. I want to hear the backstory. Tell us a little bit about life in Australia, and tell us a bit about why and how you got to Canada, and just expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'd barely heard of Canada as a kid. I worked with a few guys while I was at university that went over to Canada pretty regularly. Didn't really think much of it. And then my older brother decided he was going for a year and doing the usual ski resort worker thing, and he never came back. And got married over here. And as I mentioned earlier, his wife worked at a newspaper and got me that first foot in the door to work as an editorial assistant, which was largely answering phones, typing things in from the journalists, and turning the photocopier on and off to fix a jam or whatever, and look like a genius. But I think that was about half my job, was just fixing the photocopier a lot of the time. But,
they should put that sign on those photocopiers that says temporary, not out of order. Temporary, not out of order. But okay, so it sounds like you came to Canada based on, again, a demonstrated kind of move by your brother. A family member has basically kind of demoed what life would be like in Canada and all of that. And so you came over. I'm sure you knew it was going to be colder here, or was it colder here? Is it colder here?
Oh, absolutely. I think I went to this is 2000. So I went to the airport, and it was I think it was 37 degrees. And when I got picked up at the airport, it was -20. So yeah, I certainly remember hitting a more than 50-degree turnaround in weather. But yeah, I know it was coming for me. But I had a great year over here. Went back, didn't think much of it. Got my journalism career started in Australia. Like, I moved around in Australia, had to go out to the country and work at the tiny little town first, and then move to a bigger place. And I was getting ready. I was getting to that stage of my career that I wanted to move back to a big city, whether it was Sydney or go to another city. And I thought, if I don't go back to Canada for one last trip now, I'll probably never go. So I decided I'd go for 6 months. My brother was playing rugby with a bunch of those guys in the hats there, and I meant to come for 6 months. And that 6 months, I was having too much fun being a rugby player. I was just working a construction job to get by, and very little responsibility. Did a year, extended it out to a year, and then met a girl and stuck around. Went back to Australia, came back to Canada, and
there it is, right there. I was waiting for that magical kind of thing, and it was a girl.
I call it the Australian brain drain. We've got all these Canadians that go down to America for the money, but I feel like all these Australian men get ensnared by a Canadian woman and move over. But I'm like the only Australian that hasn't worked at a ski resort as well. That wasn't my path. But so I started the immigration process around that, and got people over here. The rugby community is like a second family, and it's where I really learn about networking. Everybody helps people out, and it's just this. We kind of joke, you can go anywhere in the world with rugby. It's instant friends. Just add beer, and you're set. I miss Australia, and still love it. It's this great problem to have, that I've got two really great countries that I could choose from.
I gotta ask. Have you seen that movie Crocodile Dundee?
Yeah, I've.
Tell us one thing in that movie that is true, and one thing that is completely not true about how they portrayed Australia.
It's not a great deal that's particularly accurate in that movie. I don't know. It's
Hollywood.
But I don't know. No one eats bugs. Not even many of our neighbors.
We're gonna have fun.
People eat.
I want you to imitate in as best close to his voice as possible the part where he says, "Well, that's not a knife. This is a knife." And so,
as a fellow immigrant, Dune, I can't believe you're asking me to parrot the stereotypes I've had to deal with for 10, 15 years.
See, that's the point. That's the point, is that Hollywood don't have a very realistic portrayal of other countries, do they?
Well, no, but it was nice that they made a movie that wasn't completely about Americans, so that was nice. But it was a funny movie. Don't get me wrong.
It was fun.
They played up the Australian parts pretty good, and good fish out of water story and everything. So the movie was good. It wasn't terrible. I've seen a lot worse. Like The Simpsons did a much bigger number on us, and a few others. So it's probably the least embarrassing. One of the least embarrassing movies about Australians. It didn't make.
So let me ask you a different question then. Canada, as a fellow immigrant, what is the first thing that was a bit of a surprise when it comes to Canada? So first thing that you remember that was, well, that's surprising. I never thought it'd be like that. Is there something like that pop up as you think about Canada, as you think about, learning this new country, new culture, new weather, anything that's top of mind that says, I didn't realize that? It was surprising.
Probably the fact that almost every interaction starts with an apology, was something I had to get used to, and take it, just take it as it is. I used to find that, I fell into that trap for a while until I started to look at how I communicated, and I felt like sometimes apologizing was was taking away from what the other person said, or steal your own power. Now, don't get me wrong, I love the way Canadians are. I'd say that I'm probably closer to Canadian way of doing things than Australians these days, because you get tired of not fitting in. And Australia's a bit more of a outgoing, extroverted country as well. So Canada,
more direct, shall we say?
Absolutely.
More direct, yeah.
Yeah, don't worry, I can be direct as well. But yeah, so I don't know, the whole sorry to you hold a door for someone, they apologize, you hold the door, like I apologize. I found it a bit weird for a while until I understood just what it was about it. I used to laugh being down on Stephen Avenue, our business area, and holding a door for someone, and if they were 2 steps behind me, they'd apologize for making me wait, and I just kind of laugh and go, "Don't run! Like I chose to open this door." Like,
it's like we don't want to negatively impact another life in even minor ways.
Yeah, well, until you get around hockey, and then Canadian psyche changes completely.
Yeah.
You never see a know-it-all Canadian until you get onto a hockey forum or something like that, and it's the complete opposite. So, I mean, it was funny as well, because I was almost in this bubble. Like rugby guys, we have a lot of fun. Like we make sport of each other and that kind of thing. So I didn't think Canadians were as polite and gentle as what it was made out to be, because 99% of my friends were rugby guys, and we all just pile on each other and that kind of thing. It wasn't till I was in the corporate environment for a while, and I could see the differences. But and that's the thing. It's like I'll be the first person as well when someone will make the stereotype about Canadians being overly polite or whatever, and it's like we're not weak. We're not. We will stand up for ourselves. We just don't have to go about it in a aggressive kind of way that you might see elsewhere. So
Now I want to bring up your website. Tell us a bit more about what people might find on your website if they were to go there. I'm going to get the address on screen here. Is the introvertednetworker.com. So let me put that up. Go ahead. Tell us some.
Yeah, so the website's kind of two parts to it. It's a little bit about what I do, speaking about introversion, as I said before, helping leaders and organizations, or helping introverts themselves in their careers, talking about networking, a bit of the consulting that I can do around that. And then the second part of it would be providing resources for people. So I have an introvert extrovert test on there where people can do a test to work out which side of the street they're on, and a bunch of resources, blog articles, that kind of thing, about introversion, a little bit about LinkedIn, but those ones are older. So it's kind of that 2 sides to it. People who want to hire me, and people who just want to learn a bit more about introversion, and what they can learn about it, what they can learn about themselves in many respects.
Do you know Mike Lipkin? Does that ring a bell when I say that name?
It's not ringing a bell.
Okay. I was going to say you guys look a little bit like each other a little bit, but is there a video on here that I can play, just a quick clip, Dave?
If you go to the keynote page, there'll be a video on there you can just hit watch video up top.
Okay. Let me know if you can hear the sound. This one looks like you can't make it maximize, so I'm going to just keep it that size. Oh, hold on. You can't make it. Can you hear it?
Yeah, I can hear it. And what we need to do as introverted professionals is to step out of those weaknesses and step into our strengths. Find ways to focus on your strengths at work and how to identify those strengths so you can be more in your work. I sucked at networking for the better part of 2 decades until I finally said enough is enough. And I tried everything. I tried every technique out there until I could understand what worked for me and start to get ahead. Now, the moment that changed everything was when a friend innocently asked me, "How's work going?" And as I went to say, "Fine, thanks," what came out was it sucking my will to live. And I gave this guy my smoothest job-seeking elevator pitch. And he turned to me and said, "I'm an IT consultant. I don't actually have any employees." Awkward silence. A lot of people are working in their weaknesses because they don't really know who they are on that introvert-extrovert scale. So really like to educate and then inspire people to own their strengths and start using those. And then from the leadership perspective, help leaders who have introverts in their teams or might lead an entire team full of introverts, how to get the most out of them, how to get them productive and happy so they stick around longer and contribute more. There's still a bias towards extroverts in the workplace. If you're an extrovert, you're going to have an advantage when it comes to hiring or getting promoted internally. If you're an introvert, you're going to be struggling to be heard at work. Many introverts still talk about the fact they have to pretend to be extroverted in order to be heard and to get ahead at work. If you're an introverted professional, you need to understand you don't have to become second just because you're quiet. People understand that there are introverts and extroverts. People are starting to know themselves. But I'm not seeing a lot of people taking action. I speak to a lot of people after events, I speak to people online forums, and a lot of people are just stuck and taking that action. So again, recognizing those strengths, building those skills, and then finding where it's going to fit for you. But it wasn't until I learned about introversion and how people are different and how we have different strengths that I started to understand there wasn't something wrong with me, I was just different. And so if you're out there and you're struggling, whether it's in a job search, whether it's being recognized at work, just remember, you're different, not broken.
Well, that was cool. That was cool. Tell us a little bit about, I think you have a YouTube channel as well. People can go there to your YouTube channel too.
Yeah, under the same name, Introverted Networker.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the things I looked at when COVID hit and everybody in the speaking industry was asking themselves, sort of 5 to 8 minute videos just on topics that come up. So I did one, how about coming out of social distancing, how introverts are dealing with it, because it's like a reverse stereotype that happened with the lockdown. Is everyone started to say, "Oh, introverts will be in heaven," and I found a lot of introverts were being a bit rough as well, like making a lot of jokes about how all the extroverts are going to suffer, and how they're this is our time, and got a bit harsh. I felt, but what a lot of people didn't understand is you didn't just lock a lot of introverts away by themselves. I've been locked in a house with 2 kids and my girlfriend for that first 2-3 months, and that's not an introvert heaven. Like being stuck with people, like I needed my downtime. This studio behind me was is also the basement where I would come to hide, to read, to watch TV and that kind of thing, and get my trusty noise cancelling headphones on. So done some videos talking about that, and Zoom fatigue and how everybody can deal with it, but also introverts. So and I'm always interested in ideas for what questions people have to make more videos. So if people see this, even even after the recording, and they want to ask me a question or suggest something for me to tackle, I'm all ears, because there's not a great deal of content sort of in video form on introverts. And when I was researching sort of the lockdown and introverts versus extroverts in the lockdown, most of the videos that were made, I swear they were made by extroverts. They were jumping about, they were like acting out scenes, being an extrovert and being an introvert. And I was looking at it and was like, is that what I need to do to be successful on YouTube? Like become an actor? And and I went, that's not me, and it's never going to be me. You know, it's a struggle I've had with speaking. I've always had people sort of saying, you've got to be more out there. You've got to dial it up. And I feel I operate at like 400% of regular Dave when I'm speaking, but people are like, it's got to be more. It's got to be more. And you got to be emotional and that kind of thing. And while I've found that, it does have some place, it's not how I work. Like I'm almost a straight man when I talk. I usually let the punchline begin. Sorry?
Okay, your video just paused for just a second there. It's good now, so we're good.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I'll usually let an image be the punchline if I'm trying to get a laugh out of the audience and make something stick or that kind of thing. I'm not the out there front man. So YouTube's been another way of finding my way of being authentic while still getting across your message, because so many introverts struggle with being able to communicate, being more out there. We get these, like I made a video a long time ago called Extroverts Ask Introverts Stupid Questions. And I had a couple of extroverts get mad at me about it. And I'm like, well, how would you feel if you got, why you get asked, why are you so quiet? Like hundreds of times over your lifetime. Or do you have any friends? Things like that. So I made a video kind of mocking that, and like it was basically like what we do say and then what we would really like to say to people. I still toned it down quite a bit from what sometimes I would like to say. A lot of introverts struggle with whether it's just in the workplace, being open enough and building relationships, because introverts are really good at more the one-on-one or the small scale relationship building. They're not great at doing it at scale and being that person that knows everybody. It doesn't really, we're wired differently, and we should accept it and work based on how we're wired. With the caveat that you do have to stretch. You still have to stretch, build. Like if you've got no communication skills and you're complaining and you're saying that's because I'm an introvert, no, that's you started at a disadvantage, but that's because you haven't worked at it. So I don't let introverts off and saying you can just be yourself, just sit in your basement, never talk to anybody, and everything will work out. That's not.
And the same could be said and should be said about extroverts. Now, if you're wired a certain way, that is not an excuse to just behave that way all of the time. You have to also learn the other side and know when to go there and know when to go back to your normal state. So again, great to know how you're wired, but stretching is really a challenge for both of those. I think for both introverts and extroverts, we have to stretch outside of our comfort zone and discover the rest of the perspectives a little bit. And then you kind of settle back to your default and comfortable mode most of the time, but you have to be able to go outside when necessary. At the very least, respect people who operate outside of that and not say, my way is the only valid way to behave in the world, right?
Absolutely, yeah, and I certainly look at it as stretching. I was all in for the whole concept of stepping outside of your comfort zone, and this whole all growth happens outside of your comfort zone. But being outside of your comfort zone completely is like exhausting, and you're going to end up like in bed like for a month if you're constantly exhausting yourself because you're acting so far out there. I more think of it as a bubble, and you can kind of stretch that bubble, and get broader. Like building my speaking skills, I stretch that bubble, but it doesn't mean that I go to a networking event and I'm like, hey, life of the party, here I am, blah 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 blah. That's still not me. I'll look for the one-on-one conversations. I'll see some people that I know and kind of warm up talking to them, and then meet some people. I'll ride off the back of extroverts. If I've got a few extrovert networkers, and I'll keep an eye on them. And I'm like, such and such is off talking to some people I don't know. I'm going to go join that discussion and kind of piggyback if I'm not feeling it at the time. Whereas an extrovert might need to rein themselves back and say, okay, I don't actually have to meet everybody in this room. Why don't I slow down a little bit and get to know some people a little bit better, rather than maybe that tendency, that pressure to meet everybody. Again, there's a happy medium for everyone, and again, it doesn't mean working at the opposite end of what you're good at.
Well, the good news is I think the world in general, whether it's in leadership books or training or otherwise, have really clearly started to really recognize the power and the importance of introverts and the important role that they have in organizations. You actually don't want a team full of just extroverts, because that would be too lopsided and it actually create problems. You actually, again, now, come to the conclusion that any high performing long-term initiatives, you really need a mix of introvert and extrovert, just like you need a mix of men and women, or male and female, just like you need a mix of maybe locals versus international people. Again, diversity in all forms, including introversion versus extroversion, is a really crystallizing as a concept that people start to embracing quite a bit, actually.
Yeah. I mean, one study that I've referred back to a few times is they basically did a study on the makeup of teams, but what they found was a team full of extroverts actually does better with an introverted leader, and a team full of introverts does better with an extroverted leader. And some of it was just around, you get everybody extroverted, then everybody's trying to get the spotlight. That leader might feel not threatened, but that they need to sort of stay out front. Whereas an introverted leader would happily let those extroverts move to the front and encourage them, because they are more of a listener, a facilitator, and then vice versa. An extroverted leader can work really well with introverts, because they want to be out front. They'll go and gather, the information, the opinions, the thoughts from their team. But there was kind of less conflict in that.
That makes sense.
In that study. So it was an interesting one. But I mean, you need a mix of teams. Again, whether it's introvert, extrovert, or it's men and women, or whatever lines you want to draw up. It's almost going past just those simple ways we're categorizing each other, and what is this person good at? What's their communication style? How do we complement that? How do we facilitate it? Because everybody's got different strengths. Like I don't walk around in my life just thinking everyone's an introvert or an extrovert. That's the only way I see anybody. It's just a filter to use, so we can understand each other better. And I mentioned before, I used to struggle with some extroverts, and I used to really not understand how some people could just ramble on in a meeting, on and on and on and on. And that was my impression. When I learned that extroverts basically think out loud when they're talking, and they want the feedback. That's how they work. So they can struggle with an introvert who doesn't just throw information out there, because an introvert processes everything and comes back. The journey of information in those two brains is different. It's a longer journey for an introvert. It can touch on different parts of the brain before they come back with an answer than an extrovert. But that was a huge thing. As soon as I understood, like, there's more extroverted people, they think out loud, like what they're doing is processing the information by talking through it. I was like, cool, this is easy. This is, might still find it annoying on some people. Some people who never shut up and let me talk, but I understand where they're coming from and that we're wired differently.
Yeah. Again, always the more you can understand the why something is, the more you're able to handle what it is, right? Understand why, extroverts were sort of operate that way. Now, so Dave, as we round the corner on the time frame here, before we wrap it up, I want to ask you, as I reach out and say, hey, Dave, would you like to talk for an hour and a bit? And, we're going to talk about whatever you want to talk about. Were there things that you want to discuss that we haven't gotten to yet, my friend? Were there aspects of this whole kind of topic, any areas of your work or your kind of sharing that you want to share that we haven't gotten to yet?
Really, what we just touched on, I think, is interesting. You just mentioned the knowledge, the recognition of these differences is greater in this current corporate culture, and I agree. However, I feel like we've done stage one. We've discovered introverts. We've discovered these people like living amongst us extroverts in the workplace, that they exist and they're different. I'm not sure that we've done a great deal about it yet. There might be a little bit of recognition about people are wired a bit different, but I still see lots of people like introverts talking on forums, or if I do a talk back in the olden days when I did a talk live, people would come up and chat to me afterwards. People are still really struggling with not really being understood, or being that quiet person that struggles to get ahead or get heard. So I do think there's the next phase is putting some of that knowledge into action, whether it's the balance of teams, whether it's leaders figuring out better ways to get the most out of their team. I've had a few discussions with business leaders about how their teams work and how do they manage having a kind of rampaging couple of extroverts totally dominate team meetings and that whole concept of groupthink, because those couple of loudest voices often dominate where a meeting goes, regardless of whether they have the best ideas or not. And that's not really introvert extrovert research. That's just research on how teams work, and there's lots of data around groupthink and the problems that it can cause a workplace. So I mean, I think there's more work to be done to integrate it, and leaders need to understand how they can get the most out of it, because it's in their favor. If they want to get more productivity, if they want good people to stick around longer, if they want their team to actually get along and work better, there's a bit of work there, because I've tried to research this and come up with different numbers, but the different personality tests out there that are more for corporate use, there are thousands of them just in North America. In my corporate time, I think I did 3 different personality tests. So it's not necessarily introvert versus extrovert. Like, find whatever filter works. It's meeting people where they're at and getting that communication better and that teamwork better. I always remember doing the colors personality test, and I think it was partly because of where I was really working on my skill set, doing personal development. I was one of only 2 people who had a blend of 3 colors as dominant. Usually it was 2 and 2. And the other person that had that was like the most rampaging extrovert out there. And I worked with her, and She was great. So much energy and enthusiasm. I often felt like just an old stick in the mud, and I was like 30, 34 at worst. I couldn't match her energy and enthusiasm, but she came up and she's like, "Oh my God, we're twinsies." And I'm like, "Yeah, we're the same." Like, yeah, it was a laugh. It was like, I think there's a flaw in this system. So you can kind of look at all these different personality tests and filters, and go too far with it. I think it comes down to just shut up, listen, observe how other people work and ask them how they want to be called on, communicate, be involved, and meet people where they're at, whether you're a leader or
Now, your video froze there a little bit. I don't know if it's going to come right back. And if not, you might want to click refresh there, Dave, and we can certainly wrap up the conversation shortly after. If you can hear me, Dave, let me know. Otherwise, you might want to go into your green room there. And looks like you are frozen for the moment. So, folks, you've been listening to Dave Byrnes, the Introverted networker, and he shared a lot of ideas about really the importance of recognizing that introversion really is probably about a third of the population probably identify themselves as introverts, or at least kind of in that spectrum. So Dave, I'm going to just maybe take your video out, and hopefully you'll be able to come right back in here, my friend. And let me just go ahead and do that. And so technology has worked really well for most of the conversation here. It was just the last couple minutes here. It looks like I see Dave in the green room here. Can you hear me, Dave? Okay, looks like I don't hear you yet. So I would see if you could. So folks, let me ask you, do you consider yourself an extrovert or an introvert? Perhaps put a little note in the comment there if you feel up to sharing that. And regardless of which one you are, the most important thing is to know that the world needs both of us in this whole mix here. And introverts are very helpful and powerful in the way they process their kind of take a longer time to process information and inputs and whatnot. And we need just to kind of respect that and work with those people with that style of information processing. So as Dave, I'm sure, is making his way back on the internet kind of things there, and he'll be able to kind of wrap us up here in just a minute here, folks. Let me see if there's any questions in the public forum. No questions yet. So let me hear from you in terms of the even after the record or the live session here. Tell us your thoughts on the topic that Dave has been talking about here. I know when I first met Dave, he was not wearing a bag over his head like that. I could see his face fully, and he's quite an approachable guy and very helpful when I visited Calgary, our CAPS chapter, so the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers. I go to Calgary every so often to kind of just visit the chapter there when we have our Super Saturday thing, and now it's online, of course. But Dave has been on the board actually of CAPS Calgary for a while now, probably multiple years now, and he has been quite involved in the board there in Calgary. And so as he worked his technology in trying to get back to the conversation here, let me also tell you a little bit about the story that Dave shared about how he went from really Toastmasters kind of focus to the professional speaking side of things, where CAPS is at. And a shout out to my Toastmasters buddy out there. I don't spend a lot of time with Toastmaster these days, but there was a time when I attended weekly meetings, Toastmasters meeting. Hey, Dave, welcome back. Can you hear me, my friend in the green room? Wonderful. So let me bring you back in here. And so Dave, as I was just saying that Toastmasters and CAPS and the commonality there, I was just doing a quick shout out to our Toastmasters friend. Keep on doing what you're doing, my friend. Speaking is an important part. And in fact, when we speak really well, that involves a whole lot of listening, right? Anybody who's sort of been through the speaking journey realize the power of really active listening. So Dave, as we round the corner on the time here, I would love for you to kind of take us out here in however fashion you like, in terms of you can tell more stories if you like, you can summarize some stuff, you can leave our viewers with some sentiments to ponder. Yeah, I'd like you kind of wrap up in any which way you like, and there's no time pressure. Take as long as you like, my friend.
Yeah, really just to go back to some of what we've discussed about. I mean, if you're curious about the topic out there, don't know whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, or something you haven't looked into, yeah, I mean, you can find an introvert test on my site, but you basically can just put in introvert extrovert test and you will get many free options out there, or you can go as far as doing a Myers-Briggs test. But if you're curious about it, it's more than just quiet versus loud. It'll help you get a bit of a handle on your strengths, and this is always tough work, sort of understanding what you're good at. But it gives so many rewards to understand yourself better, be able to work on things that you might be lacking, but then also build on those strengths. Because what I experience and what I've talked to a lot of people about is too many people are working in their weaknesses instead of in their strengths. And it feels a lot better to be working in those strengths. It doesn't mean magically you get to always do what you want at work or in your own business. Especially if you're in your own business, you rarely get to do exactly what you want to do. There's a lot of other work that goes into everything. I'm sure you'd agree with that.
Having your own business is kind of like being a parent, isn't it? When we were young, we thought, oh, parents must be able to do whatever they want. And then we become parents and we realize, no, maybe it's not quite true.
Yeah, maybe when you get a babysitter, so about 8 hours a week, maybe you get to do exactly what you want, and the rest is the reality of things. I just encourage people to learn a little bit more about how they tick, how they're wired, understand that, and you can be a bit more happy, a little bit more productive. Maybe it's an extra source of fatigue operating outside of yourself. I didn't have to. I chose to pretend to be extroverted in certain roles, and a lot of people have talked about it, especially in leadership roles. People feel that they have to act extroverted. As you've said, there's more knowledge coming out about that, but it's kind of the way that things have worked for a long time. So if you can take something else off your plate, like this time is hard enough. We've got enough stress in our lives. So if you feel like you're perhaps fighting against something, then learn a little bit more about yourself. There's lots of resources out there, and feel free to reach out to me through the chat on Facebook here, and I'd be happy to answer questions or point you in the right direction to some resources. Because it was definitely a game changer, understanding myself a bit better and why things had felt off for a long time in certain regards. So that would be my kind of final say. Thanks, Dune.
Cool. Now I'm going to ask you one more thing. If there were three words that you want our viewers to think about as they think about you and the conversation we've had today? What might those words be, my friend? It could be, so Dave, it could be 3 words in a sentence or a phrase, or it could be maybe 3 random words that are unrelated. I heard a few words that resonated there, but I'm curious what you might highlight.
Yeah, I think from a lot of what we discussed, things that came up was your strengths. So that would be my first word, is understanding your strengths and owning them. Stretching was another one that, you've got to have that happy medium between growing all the time, but not doing it so much that it's you're out of your comfort zone, you're out of your strength zone so often. And yeah, I guess the final one would be to listen. Listen to other people. Again, my whole introvert extrovert bit is just another way to understand different people. So listen to people, ask them how do you want to communicate, or whatever the situation is, work, personal, that kind of thing. If you can listen to people, they will tell you, what they need, how they want to do things. So yeah, I think those 3 would be good.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Dave. Everybody, you've been listening to Dave Byrnes, and all the way from Australia over to Canada, based on a few different factors. And yes, a girl was involved, but he is here in Canada, probably for the foreseeable future, folks, cold weather and all. And we are delighted that you are with us, my friend. And as I mentioned while you were off on the quick technology glitch there, that you've been a board member of the Calgary CAPS chapter as well. And so thank you for your time and energy and effort in that. It's always take way more time than one might imagine when one joins a board. I understand that. And so we appreciate it, my friend. And again, folks who are watching, take good care of yourself, take good care of one another. Until we meet again, have a wonderful rest of your day. And yes, this has been Dave Byrnes that we've been listening to. And he is an introverted networker, I would say, expert. And with that, have a good day, everyone.
Thanks, Dune.
Thanks, Dave.